Boy, season 5 started out on fire. And let me tell you, I love a good intro, but we're going to jump right into it because I don't want to hold you too long. Now, we start back at season 1 with Lil Will. He's out here running for his life in the Upside Down. So the Demogorgon caught Will and brought him back to Vecna. So Vecna decided to upload all his little files from the new OS, which connected him and Will for forever. And one thing I recognized from the jump, all my babies done grew up. Even Lil Holly got big. Now, she's over here at this table reading a book in a house full of people. I was like, well, there's too many of y'all up in there. Even Ted thought that. He was like, listen, we need to get them up out of here. But that's what happens when y'all are under quarantine. So you can't really kick them out. They don't really have anywhere else to go because the rest of the town that's left behind, that's in the quarantine, they are in a small contained area, and the government has covered up all those massive holes that the fourth gate opening caused. So baby, you got to make do. So we get over to Hawkins High, and Brother Dustin is feeling himself. He's walking through that hall. He's a little edgier than he used to be, probably because he's trying to rep for his man Eddie, who he lost in last season. And, he's rocking his Hellfire Club shirt, and, it's just what he's doing. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm sick of these Letterman lad bullies because they getting on my nerves. Like, leave that man alone. Now, I totally understand what Dustin is trying to do. He's trying to stand up for himself. He's going through a traumatic event, but he got a little mouth on him, and he's totally not helping this situation. So anytime you bring somebody's mama into the conversation, it's not going to bode well for you. So the bully was more enraged and decided he was just going to rip the shirt off of Dustin. And so he started doing so. And by the time he got to the little cleavage of Dustin, Lucas, Mike, and Will showed up to stop it. And when the bullies left, they were like, Dustin, man, what are you doing? You over here starting fights with local bullies and stuff. I know they picking with you, but you gotta figure this out because we gotta lay low. We trying to take Vecna down. And Dustin fired back like, you don't think I want to do that too? But he said, we still got a rep for our buddy Eddie. Now, honestly, I do understand both sides because Dustin did actually have a deeper connection with Eddie because he went through it in the trenches in the Upside Down when they had that battle after Eddie crushed that Metallica. And then all of a sudden he watched him die in his arms. So I do understand that part of Dustin, but you got to see the bigger picture, fam. You can talk about that after y'all kill Vecna. So after their conversation, the camera pans over to a flyer on the wall that reads, Missing Teen, Jane Hopper. So these folks been looking for Elle for a while to no avail. Meanwhile, she's out here training to be the next ninja warrior or something like that. She's jumping over buses. She's exploding heads and everything. She's trying to beat her record so she can go on the next crawl with Hopper. And she's really doing a good job trying to break that record. So back over at the Squawk, you have Steve and Jonathan, who's trying to do a little bit of stick measuring. They're trying to compete for Nance's attention. And Nance really doesn't care about it. The reason why we know that is because Murray pulled up with supplies, and by the time they got upstairs to fix it and yelled down, I fixed it, nobody was there to look at it because Murray came bearing gifts. He gave boppers to Steve. He got a Coltrane tape for Jonathan, so they can get engaged a little bit. He had burn papers for Nance, and he said, I know it's a little bit earlier than expected, but a supply drop this large can take up to 2 hours, which gives Hopper enough time to do a crawl and try to find Vecna and end this thing. So then we get back over to Hawkins High, and we got the brothers over here talking about Henderson, saying, hey, he has really lost it. And they're just really talking about him until he shows up to the table talking about, who y'all talking about? Who lost it? And they immediately lie to their friend. I'm like, nah, if this would have been my friend, I would have been like, we talking about you because you messing up. And we need somebody to be locked and loaded so we can take Vecna down. Because what are you doing right now? Little did they know, their friend already made another dumb mistake by throwing a whole snake in somebody's locker. But that's a whole different conversation for a different time. But this awkward conversation that they were having at the table got interrupted by Rockin' Robin, who dropped knowledge over the waves over the tune of one Miss Diana Ross upside down to deliver this coded message that only the people that needed to hear it heard it. So that's when everybody got to their designated spots. They started talking strategy. Now, in one location, Steve was like, I think Vecna might be dead because this doesn't make sense. We've been looking all over in these different crawls and we haven't had much luck. And the zone that we're looking at right now is very boring. So what are we even trying to do right now? Meanwhile, in a totally different area, Will done got the willies out in the woods with his partners. So he's having a vision as well. And he doesn't quite understand the vision, but it's making him dizzy. So he has to post himself up on a tree so he doesn't fall. So back over at the schoolhouse, you have Holly who's laying on the merry-go-round. She's looking at the sky. She has a very similar vision to Will, but the orientation is different. So they're going to see it in a slightly different way. And the teacher, Miss Harris, comes back out to tell the kids to come in from recess. Now, before they go inside, Holly stops over here at the fence. Now, we see a hand, and I'm thinking, I know who this is, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to just guess right away. But I definitely saw a hand on that fence, so I know it wasn't crazy. But Miss Harris came over there to get her, and she was like, I know this girl ain't over here talking to herself. Like, what is this, honey? She was a little freaked out. Now, as Joyce, Elle, and Hopper are trying to get prepared for the crawl, Elle is going back and forth with Hopper like, hey, I beat my time. You told me if I beat this record that you would let me go on the next crawl with you. And Hopper was like, I didn't see it. How are you going to say that? Your battery was almost drained, so you could do it again the next time, and we'll talk about it then. And she was like, you lying. I know you lying. I know you saw that I did this. He was like, oh, I was taking notes when Rock and Robin was on the radio. So they were going back and forth. He's just trying to keep her safe, honestly, because at the end of the day, he knew that she beat the record with seconds to spare. And Joyce was like, you don't let that girl do anything. And he was like, well, you don't let Will do anything. And she was like, well, that's different. I was like, both of y'all got issues. So after school, you have Mike looking for Holly so they can ride home together or whatever. But she's nowhere to be found in the normal spot. So he goes inside the school and he finds her sitting on a bench outside of Miss Harris's room. Now, Miss Harris was alarmed after what she saw outside in the playground. She was like, I don't know who she's talking to, but it ain't us. So she called her mom. And so the mom is in there just having a conversation with her. While they were sitting on this bench outside, Holly told Mike about Mr. Whatsit. And she said he's protecting her. He told her that there's monsters in Hawkins and they like to eat kids like her. And Mike was like, nah, ain't no monsters out here, girl. And I'm like, now, Mike, with all the things that you and your friends done been through, y'all done lost some people for real. And you sitting here lying to your sister like that. For a place like Hawkins that's so dangerous, I feel like the truth should be flowing. But y'all love to lie to each other in this place. And what's so crazy is Mike is listening to his sister talk, but not really hearing what she's truly saying. Because he's been through too much to not listen. And I know he's trying to keep her safe in this moment, but sometimes the truth actually keeps you pretty safe as well. At least you won't be oblivious when some stuff happens. What he did do is give Holly this figurine of Holly the Heroic to keep her from being afraid. Now back over at the hospital, you got Will, who's putting his nose in a place it shouldn't be. Now he was in the room with Lucas and Max. Lucas trying to get Max out of that coma. And, Will was like, man, I need to go get a little soda. Let me go get a Coke real quick. So he's out there and he sees Rock and Robin come in and she's coming in hot too. And he's like, Robin, my girl. And she clearly didn't hear him because she kept going toward her destination. But he was like, she gonna hear me. So he followed her. Didn't even see where she went. But he was like, I'm still gonna try to find her. So he heard some women laughing inside of a room. And the door was slightly ajar, but not enough so you could see in there. So he decided to make it more ajar so he could see what all this laughing was about. Now, anybody could have been behind this door, but he decided that it was his business to open this door. And when he cracked that door open, he saw an intimate moment between Robin and Vicky. And he was so gagged that he dropped his soda on the floor and took off running. Now, he didn't even have to do all of this. He could have just closed the door and minded his business or not opened it altogether. But he decided he was going to run down the hall and make this whole commotion. Now, somebody else who didn't have to do all that was Dustin putting a snake in old boy's locker, because that was the reason why them boys showed up at Eddie's grave, defaced it, and then put hands and feet on this man. Now, this would have been different had he just been at school and they had a little school fight or whatever, but you actually had more pressing business to take care of today at an appointed time. So, of course, he didn't make it to the squawk like he was supposed to. So they were looking for him. Just mad disappointing. So not only did you catch a beat down, you let your friends down, because now we have to fill your role. Like, who else is going to help with the tracking? So now they're trying to figure out who can we use for this. Willow's like, I can do it. But of course, Joyce is finna be like, not my son, not my son. She don't play about that boy. But then Jonathan was like, I can take care of it. And she was like, well, I guess you can go. So now everybody's getting to their positions. You got Hopper, who's walking underground in the tunnels that they've dug. And above ground, you have Holly, who's upstairs. She seems to be a really happy child, by the way, like well adjusted. Those other Willers, they are jaded. They probably feel like the world is about to end every day. But she is just super excited. So when she goes downstairs, she actually starts eavesdropping on her parents, and they are talking about her. Like, girl, seeing imaginary people, I don't know what to say about that. That's crazy. And Holly, being the sweet person she is, she goes upstairs and starts boo-hooing. Because she's big, but she's also still young. So back over at the military base, you have the burners that are at this gate ready to set the thing ablaze so they can ride through that bad boy. And after getting the go-ahead from Mike and Lucas, Hopper jumps in the back of one of the vehicles that drives through. So they enter into the upside down, and for a second it seemed like smooth sailing. The trackers, Jonathan and Steve, were following pretty well, but then they came to this abrupt stop. They started running into each other. And the reason for this halt is because they got ambushed by a Demogorgon. And this small attack caused a few problems, because the people that were tracking Hopper were like, why did he stop so quickly? Hopper got grazed by a bullet, and the truck that he was riding in the back of ran into a tree. So much for things being boring in that sector. And then Will gets the willies again and has yet another vision. He's now seeing through the eyes of the Demogorgon. He faints, and then he fries the communication system. So now they can't even talk to Hopper. Now, as Will was having this vision through the eyes of the Demogorgon, he saw that it was heading over to the Willis place. So when he finally woke up, he told the entire crew where it was headed. So Elle and Nance jumped in the car so they could stop it. Now, the family had no clue what was coming their way. Papa Willow was out there playing golf, Mama Willow was getting bottle service, and Holly was still in the bed crying. Then all of a sudden, the lights in Holly's room started flickering. And then that's when Big D bust out the ceiling like... And that's pretty much where episode 1 ended, because you can't end an episode generally without some kind of creature screaming from the upside down. And so in episode 2, it picked right back up with Holly fighting for her life while her parents were none the wiser. Now, I did question if Holly already had powers, because that one toss into the bookshelf should have done it. But this actually made me think she was Holly the heroic to begin with, because the Demogorgon was like beating her all through that room, dragging her through the ceiling, talking about, girl, bring your ass. Like, it was crazy. But she was able to slip out of that boot and make it all the way to her mom, who was drawing a nice bubble bath with a glass of wine. Now, she got to her mom and was trying to explain to her why she was so afraid. She was like, hey, this monster's in my room right now. Her mom was like, it's just a nightmare, girl. And, you know, the mom might have been gone on that wine just a little bit, but she sobered up real quick when she touched the back of Holly's head and was like, now, girl, what is this? You leaking? And then all of a sudden she heard that Demogorgon beating down that door. And all of a sudden she was like, hold up. Papa Willie pulled himself away from that golf swing long enough so he could look at those lights flickering in the house like, what is going on up in there? So you know he had to go check it out. And it was a good thing, because that Demogorgon would not be denied. Burst into the bathroom. It didn't see Holly or Karen. And it was looking around, breaking through things, looking in the shower, all that stuff. And it got ready to look in the water under those bubbles where they were hiding. They were holding their breath as long as they could. And just as you think the Demogorgon is about to look in that water with them, Papa Willie yells out something and gets its attention. There were a couple of things in this scene that made me laugh. One of them was when Ted encountered the Demogorgon and he decided to yell at it, hold up, stay back. And I'm thinking, Ted, you know this thing ain't got no face, right? Also, this whole time, all the shows, I haven't heard it speak a lick of English, so I'm trying to figure out why you talking to it. Boy, if you don't get to swinging. He did eventually get to swinging, and that was cute and all, but the Demogorgon reeled back like a wrist rocket, swiped hard left on his ass, and knocked him clean into the next room. And while all that was happening, Karen and Holly tried to run right behind the Demo so they can get away from it. They got down them stairs, Demo disappeared and reappeared through a different portal downstairs. So it was like, oh my gosh, y'all in real danger. Now, there's a clear distinction between Mama Willa and Papa Willa in the way that they handle this situation, because Mama Willa turned into Wonder Wino when she was trying to protect her baby. One thing about Karen, she gonna fight, she gonna argue, and she gonna hit that bitch with a bottle. And I think she might have been tipsy at least, because I don't think she left much in that bottle. Because when she broke it, I didn't see too many heavy splashes anywhere. So good for her thinking ahead of what she needed to do to protect her child later. And she used that broken part of the glass to go to town on that Demogorgon. And I was rooting for Mama too, because she was really putting in that work. But then the moment they changed scenes over to Elle and Nance in that car, I said, oh yeah, she gonna be dead by the time they get there. Especially because Nance decided to park in the driveway. I thought she was gonna just drive through the front door. Drive on the grass, girl. Get to the front door faster than that. But she didn't. She parked politely. So by the time they got in the house, Mom was down and Holly was gone. And the portal that the Demogorgon was taking Holly into was quickly closing. So Nance told Elle, hey, go ahead and get in there, just find my sister. And even though they didn't have Holly, it was good that the kids got to the house fast enough, because they were able to save their parents' lives. They both got rushed to the ER. Both of them had to go through surgery, and they lived, barely. And while they were sitting in the waiting room, Nance was talking to Mike and Lucas, and she said, this is our fault that we didn't move our parents away from Hawkins, or at least tell them the truth. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, parents are actually supposed to be more responsible for the safety of the children and not the other way around. Like, they could have told their parents the truth. I don't know how much they would have believed from them, but, you know, my thing is, how many other clues do you need to leave Hawkins? You started season 1, Will came up missing for like a week. Y'all already had a funeral for him. And then y'all find out he shows back up all mysterious. You don't really have the true information about that. Then you have this situation where them boys, them feds or whoever, The government agency shows up to your house and says your kids have kidnapped some girl from a lab. That's already bad. Then you find out that Barb done died randomly. And all of this stuff is happening around your family. You just don't really pay attention to it. And the last straw should have been when you felt the earth move under your feet when Vecna opened that last gate. Shout out to Carol King. The universe is probably looking at them like, what more do you want from me? You had all of that to go off of, and a whole bunch of other people evacuated Hawkins, and you're like, I think we should stick around. Girl, what? They could have been gone. And then Mike replied to her. He said, but Holly had nothing to do with this. This makes no sense after all these years. And Nan says, but it makes perfect sense because Vecna showed me all of this. He showed me the gates. He showed me mom, dad, Holly, all of this stuff going the wrong way. He showed me what's coming. And he's coming to fulfill all of this. But then Lucas chimed in and was like, honestly, if that were true, Vecna would have killed both of your parents, but he in fact left both of them alive. He also would have killed Holly and left her here for you to find, but he didn't do that either. He doesn't leave things undone. He said, I'm having serious deja vu right now because we 3 days away from when Will was taken. And he said, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. So let's go back to what Mike said about it not making sense for them to come for Holly at this point in time. The Demogorgon finally got my girl Holly. It actually makes perfect sense because they've been trying to come after Holly since season 1. You know, back when she wasn't really talking, but she was serving all the looks that said enough. There go Mike and Nan's talking shit again. Look, it seemed like we only had peace in the house when y'all ain't here. I wonder what I'm gonna eat later. We probably gonna do some crayons this time. She was just a chill baby back in the day. But then they went over to Mama Joyce's house to comfort her when Will came up missing. And while Karen was sitting there talking, Holly wasn't really paying attention to what they were talking about. Her attention was actually more so on the flashing lights. And she followed those lights to this room in the house, and she started seeing the wall move. The Demogorgon was about to reach through there, and she was like, damn, why this wall got motion? And that's when Karen asked, where's Holly? And she and Mama Joyce got up, and they found her in the room, and Joyce was like, hey, did you see something? And Holly literally said yes. And Karen interrupted that because she didn't like Joyce's tone because, you know, Joyce was a little bit high-strung at that moment because her son was missing, so she was trying to figure out anything she could figure out at that moment. But that could have also saved Holly and Karen. And that was the moment where, like, Vecna wasn't really as strong as he was. He was kind of testing stuff out with Will, but he didn't start escalating that situation until now. So it's safe to say that Holly has always been on the menu. So we get back over to the Wheeler house and we see that the military is all up and through there. And Sullivan was like, we don't believe Nance. Nance said that she came there by herself, but we don't believe you. You need more people. So he said, pull all the surveillance footage from around this area. They just know that Elle was in that house. Because they saw that portal, they were like, I bet she came over here with somebody else. And Elle is on the other side of that portal. She's looking for Holly right now, but then she ran into Hopper in the woods. He was out there tiptoeing in the woods, making crackles and stuff, and she's out here nervous, done threw that man all up into a tree. You can't be walking up on people in the dark like that, Hop. That's how you get this work. Anybody should know better. It should be you. He was very confused as to why she was in there in the first place, but she started to get him up to date. She found some blood of the Demogorgon. She said she must have injured it. He said, who? Karen and her wine. Now, Elle didn't have to say all that. This girl wasn't speaking much when he first found her. But now that she's good and fluent in everything, she knows how to be petty in her own superhero way. Because why she bring it to the table that Karen got a drinking problem? That wine is an absolute necessity for her. You know she married to Ted. So then we get back over to the Squawk, and Joyce and Will are having this conversation about his visions. He said they're getting way more intense, and he said it's like he was the Demogorgon, so he feels a lot more now. It's interesting because he said when the gate opened, he felt Vecna. But then he said once he went out to California, it went away. But it came back once he showed back up to Hawkins. And he feels that Vecna is way closer than he's ever been before. And then Robin chimes in and says, maybe you're more like the radio receiver. You know, when the antenna gets closer to the radio waves, the signal is way clearer. And when you're not, it's all static. And that's when Will brought up his vision that he had in the woods near the school. He was like, I need to go back over there so I can reconnect and get closer to the hive mind. And of course, Joyce was like, no, my son, it is not safe. And I was like, girl, ain't nothing y'all doing safe right now. Y'all were crazy enough to stay in Hawkins this whole time, even though you could have evacuated. And now you're stuck in a place where you're constantly seeing creatures just pop up out of nowhere. And speaking of stuck, you have Jonathan and Steve, whose van ran out of juice. So they have a good Samaritan who's charging up the car for them. trying to give them a boost. And while they wait, they have a nice little serious conversation about Jonathan and Nancy's relationship. Because Steve is like, man, we need to go take your girl some flowers. We need to show her some love for the family. Like, they've been through it right now. She needs a little bit of comfort. Let's stop by at the hospital on the way back, show her that we're here for her. And Jonathan was like, man, can you just cut it for 1 second, man? I know you've been trying to impress her and get back in her good graces and all that stuff, but you got to chill out. And even though I do think he's trying to be slick sometimes, I don't think Steve's trying to get back with Nance. He knows her. He understands her really well. She still has feelings for him, but she doesn't love him though. And Steve was like, I'm sorry if I sound like a bad person for caring about my friend. Yeah, that's exactly what I am. And he said, you know what? You can't be mad at me because you're miserable in your relationship, but you know who's more miserable than you? Nance. He pretty much told Jonathan, you need to get out of your own way. You're the reason why your relationship isn't doing well. And that's when the van turned on, and right before they were getting ready to leave, they looked over to the left and saw dusty ass Dustin. He was pushing his bike over there. He was bloody and beaten. And I'm thinking, why are you walking next to the bike, buddy? You supposed to be riding that thing over here so you can get here faster. Maybe you can't sit on the bike seat because you still got a foot up your ass. Maybe that's what took so long. You done walked the whole way. Now in the Upside Down, Hopper is talking to Elle about how she got to the Wheeler house, and he was just like, how did y'all get there? What tunnel did you take? And she said, we rode in the car. And he was pissed about that, and he was yelling at her. He was like, you didn't really think this plan through. And it's just based off of emotions and impulse. You gotta love a guy who's yelling at the top of his lungs to a woman about how she's too emotional and she's not thinking logically. All while in the Upside Down where anything can grab you up if it hurt you. But then Elle turns to him and calmly says, not emotion, instincts, and kept it moving. Now back on the right side of Earth, you have Lucas talking to Max at the hospital. She's still in that coma. He's trying to talk her out of it though. But he was like, the final battle started tonight and we need you. So he was trying to wake her up and he kept playing that Kate Bush. You gotta love the loyalty on this brother. Like, there's some things that they write for Lucas that I don't love, but you gotta love that part of the character. Now, while walking through the hospital, Mike looks in one of the rooms and notices that the book A Wrinkle in Time is sitting in there. Now, this made him start thinking about Holly, because that was the book she was reading at the breakfast table that morning, as well as when he sat down to talk to her on that bench at school. And this got his wheels to turning, because he started talking to Nance and he was like, do you know anything about Mr. Whatsit that Holly was talking about? She was telling me that he was talking to her about monsters and Hawkins. So it appears that he did hear what she was saying and he really wasn't focusing on what she was saying at the time. And Nancy did remember something about Mr. Whatsit, but they said the person that would know the most would be their mom. Now, as Dustin, Steve, and Jonathan were riding back to the squawk, Steve was questioning Dustin on really what happened to him, but Dustin wasn't going to tell him the truth. But that didn't stop Steve from keeping his foot on his neck. He was like, was it the Letterman lads? Because I just can't believe you would run into a tree unless it was shaped like a fist. He was like, for once, just admit that you were wrong. Boy, that arrogance is something else, though. And if we being real, Steve is out here preaching today. He already got Jonathan together earlier, and now he's on Dustin's top. Dustin has to do better, though.
Dustin has always been this way. Remember when he found D'Artagnan?
He didn't know it was a demidog until it started growing. Will told him that was the same creature that he heard in his visions of the Upside Down at the time. And the whole crew decided that they were going to get rid of Dart. But what did Dustin do? He kept Dart, hid it from his crew, and then put everybody at risk. On top of that, you had your boy Lucas jumping in the dumpster being funky all day at school for no reason. You some kind of terrible friend when you let me jump in the dumpster while you know exactly what we're looking for, and then you pretend like you're looking for it with us. It wasn't until it ate your cat at the house that you were just like, oh, we got to get rid of this thing. But you brought Steve over there to help you get rid of it because you lied to your friend so much that you couldn't tell him the truth. They had to find out the hard way. So if anybody knows how bad you are at lying, it's Steve. Now moving from one liar to the next. So we're back over at the squawk, and the only three people that are there is Robin, Joyce, and Will. And out of nowhere, Robin yells, "Great Scott!" I don't even know what that means, but I might have to start incorporating that into some of my conversations. So she ran over to the table with Joyce and asked her, how long has this red light been on? And Joyce wasn't really sure, but she was like, oh my gosh, that means that the defibrillator and the ibulator is messed up. She was counting on a parent not knowing anything about technology, which y'all gotta do better. This is how the babies get over. So she says, hey, I gotta go fix this immediately. But she said it's a two-person job. So she snatched up Will real quick and ran upstairs. And when they got upstairs, Robin told Will, of course I was lying. That light is always on. But I had to get you away from your mom because her plan was trash, but your plan was absolute genius. Now we're gonna sneak out and do your plan, and your mom gonna be a little pissed, but it's gonna be what it is. It'll work out. Boy, don't we love to see a good gay link up. So Will and Robin hit the woods back in the spot that he had that vision, but he didn't feel anything. And while they were walking and talking in the woods, Robin took a chance to ask him, hey, were you at the hospital by chance today? And he decided to play dumb. He was like, hospital? Now what is that? Is this a real place? And she was like, it's just that me and Vicky have this special friendship that people may not understand completely. So let's just keep it a secret. And I was like, oh, so that means that Vicky gonna be your little friend slash roommate that shows up for the holidays. Got it. I mean, I understand it is the Gaties. People weren't as free in that time. So they continue their exploration. They head over to the playground. Meanwhile, Hop and Elle are doing their own exploration down in the Upside Down. They run into Vecna's wall and they also find one of Holly's boots. And Elle suspects that this is why she can't find Holly in her mind, and it's because they took her through this wall. And I remember looking at one of the previous seasons where it talked about like when Vecna is defeated or that darkness is defeated, that it comes back stronger. So maybe Vecna is learning lessons. He was like, well, shoot, she piggybacked in last time and almost took me down. But this time I'm going to build a wall so tall that she can't get through unless I want her to. It's like the Night King building his own wall to keep the normal people out. He's like, look, we dead over here, son. So y'all ain't gonna be able to get in here unless you got a dragon. So Mike and Nance dress in costumes so they can sneak in and see Karen because the doctor wasn't gonna let them. And they get in there to start talking to their mom, and she can barely speak, obviously, because her throat has been severely damaged, but she was recovering. She can write, though. The first thing she asks about is Holly, and of course, Holly is missing, so that increases her heart rate, and they calmed her down because they were like, hey, we're trying to find somebody that might be able to help find her. It's Mr. Whatsit. Now, while they were getting that information, Robin and Will were on the playground where Holly spent most of her days, and Will was explaining to Robin what he saw during recess on that merry-go-round. So then we get back over to the hospital where Karen is telling Mike and Nance that the teacher saw Holly talking to Mr. W, but nobody was there. And then over at the park, Will is talking about how Vecna sees what his victim sees while he's stalking him. And that's when he had that revelation where he was like, okay, maybe I'm seeing from Vecna's perspective now. So he becomes Vecna in that moment of sight. Now back at the hospital, Mike and Nance are almost at a revelation of their own because they're getting the deets on what Mr. Whatsit looks like. This brother is casket sharp. He's rocking the suit and pocket watch to boot. And then they were like, does he have a name? And Karen was like, yeah. And she wrote it out and it spelled out Henry. And they looked at each other in shock. So then the next scene you see is Holly being walked into the house by Henry himself. And I was like, po little Holly. And that's where they ended this episode, with him closing the door behind them. Now, when I first saw that hand on the fence, I was like, it's gotta be him. But I wasn't sure because part of me wanted to know why he was able to come on Earth in human form without being detected by anybody but the people he wanted to see him. If I had to guess, I would say that he's doing something similar to what he did last season, except it just not being a nightmare for her because clearly she feels comfortable being around him. She was waving at him outside of her house earlier, and then when she was at school, he came to talk to her. She was smiling. He's doing something that makes her want to talk to him. So hopefully some of that will be explained a little bit later. So we start off episode 3 with Hop and Elle. They're trying to break into this wall, but nope. I told you were going to need a whole dragon to burn that wall down. And Elle was like, I closed this gate. I can open it. I just need some food for my battery. So she goes rummaging through Hopper's bag, and Hopper takes the bag from her and says, you're not going to do this. You had a fully charged battery and didn't make a dent in the wall. And she said, hey, pass me that fuel. So he tossed her a can of beef jerky. And in full scary movie fashion, she tosses that thing at him.
I said $1, bitch.
Ow!
And says, you got anything else? And he said, honestly, this is a party of one. I got the stuff that I wanted to eat for myself, so you might need to just go ahead and try this. Now, while they were over there trying to snip into that Slim Jim, company started rolling up from the military. Now, on top of one of the vehicles, there's a weapon that kind of produces these waves to neutralize beings like Elle.
So sis was frozen in that moment.
Elle and Hopper hid because they didn't know who these people were. Now, on the right side up, you have Will and Robin that's riding their bikes back to the Squawk after they did their nice little recon mission, and Joyce is frantically looking for them. So she drives right past them and comes to a screeching halt after she sees them. And she circles back around and tells them to get in the car. And when they got in the car, she scolded them. And she was heavy on the my son, my son, my son rhetoric. Will apparently had enough of that for the day because he stopped his mom and was like, listen, I'm right here. And if we being honest, your plan sucked and it was safe. We can't afford to play it safe right now. But my plan was T. And because we went and executed that plan, we have more information right now.
Information that we can use against Vecna as he's stalking his next victim. And moving forward, the next time you want me to stay by your side, if it's not outside, I wouldn't count on it.
And Robin chimed in and said, for future reference, like I said, next time we'll try to leave a note, which I don't trust you to leave a note because you lie a lot. You're going to have to prove that one, sis. Maybe that'll be a funny joke later on in the season where she actually does leave a note when they sneak off. Now, it's good that they got all this information because they're going to need as much help as they can get against Vecna because Henry has been busy in these streets. outside of him going over to the Hawkins school, stalking the kids, like now he's looking over here at Derek in the classroom, and then you got him over here having brunch with Holly at his house. I know his task board is crazy on that refrigerator. I bet he be over there talking to the Demogorgon like, man, I'm gonna have to skip our pickleball appointment because, I gotta go do some stalking at 3. I gotta go terrorize some folks about 5, and I probably won't be back home till about 9. So while having brunch with Holly, Henry told her, hey, I'm bringing Derek here tomorrow. And she was like, you bringing whack ass Derek? And he was like, well, I know you don't like Derek that much, but what I'm gonna do is run the rules by him, say no funny business, or you gotta fight these monsters by yourself. And then he told her, hey, I gotta head out. I'm gonna be gone most of the day. I got everything you need in the house. Just don't go into the woods, because that's where the monsters are. So she grabbed what he told her to pull out the mailbox and went back into the house like he said. And as they part ways, you recognize that they are being watched by someone from the woods. So we're back in the Upside Down, and the military is still at the wall. Elle is still frozen because that machine is still going. And the lieutenant found Hopper's knife in the wall because he immediately recognized that it wasn't one of theirs. So he said, hey, we got company. Let's look alive. And then he told him to turn the scrambler around, and it pointed in the direction of Elle, and it was just so unbearable that she shouted out, definitely blowing their cover. And this caused a whole fight to ensue. And for a second, Hopper was actually holding his own. He took out that scrambler, and then Elle popped up ready to go to work, and that she did. She was throwing dudes every which way. So it was a relief to have that catastrophe avoided. So back over at the Squawk, the boys have been reunited with Dustin, and they're thrilled. But he's still over here lying to him about what really happened to him. And I don't know why. And I'm glad that Steve is clocking this, but he's like compartmentalizing. He's like, man, we got bigger fish to fry right now, but we're going to have to come back to why you lying so much. So Will told the group the next person on Vecna's list is Derek.
And Steve was like, Derek of the Turnbows?
And he was like, yes, very much so that one. And the reason why I know this is because I'm tapped into the hive mind, so I can see everything that Vecna sees, which is through his victim's eyes. And Derek was the person that I saw next. So they come up with this plan to kidnap Derek and his family so the Demogorgon can't get him. And they have to blindfold him so Vecna can't see through Derek's eyes and know exactly where they are, because that's exactly where the Demogorgon will show up if he does. And that was cool and all, but people were like, hey, we still need to solve the Holly problem. And Mike came up with a genius plan to save Derek and find Holly. They said, you know what, we're going to put the whole family to sleep. We're going to trick Vecna into thinking Derek is asleep, and we're going to put a tracker on the Demogorgon so we can follow it through the Upside Down to find Holly. The only caveat to that story is that they need somebody that the Turnbows already trust that can get in that house unsuspected. Now, I know they're looking for Holly, but Holly ain't looking for them because she is having a time down in good old Vecky's house because she got all the stuff she wants there. I feel like since he's in her mind, he knows exactly what she would like.
All the way down to the music, which could come back to haunt Vecna, but I'm not sure if the music is in his mind already, that it has the same impact as if it's coming from the outside.
Holly must have some great fashion sense because she be dressing out here. And while she's playing dress up and dancing around, somebody rings the doorbell quite a bit. I'm talking about a lot. And when she gets down to the door, nobody's there, of course. But she sees the flag is up on the mailbox. So she goes down there to check it, obviously. And in there, she finds a message as well as a compass.
And the letter read, I need your help. Meet me at the X. It looks like something is faintly written on this drawing of the rocks. It either says sacred or secret.
And it's signed Henry. And she's like, now, this is a conflicting message because the man literally told me not to go over there. So she was going to have to mull that over for a spell. Some other folks that are thinking things over is the military, because like Sullivan and his crew came in and was like, hold up, who's been in the Upside Down? Because my team got ambushed. I can't find Lieutenant Akers. Now, he didn't know who did it, but he was absolutely heated. So he sent out a search party to find Elle and Hopper. But Elle and Hopper already had a little POW situation. They done took Lieutenant Akers, and they decided to interrogate him. Because she was like, he peed on the wall. He didn't seem to have a problem with it. Maybe he knows how to deal with it. So Elle raised her hand as the person who wanted to interrogate him. Let me up in his mind, Hop. Let me up in there. We love when people volunteer. Speaking of which, one of my favorite nieces, the brilliant, beautiful, bold, and effective Erica, has entered the chat. She is in class being as genius as she wants to be and answering all the questions because those other people don't know them. So Lucas and Mike are outside the window trying to divert her attention from her favorite class. They get her to come out into the hallway. So she said, you got 60 seconds because I don't know why y'all called me out of my class. And then they started trying to talk about the plan. She said, oh, this is something that happened where I wasn't first string. See, I don't like all this. Now y'all got less than 60 seconds. So they started sharing the details of the Turnbow trap plan, and she wasn't really feeling it at first. And she said the 60 seconds is up. But then they sweetened the deal when they told her that Tina, her bestie that she fell out with a couple of weeks ago, that she may not speak to her ever again. And then she stopped and turned around and said, now see, this is the kind of chaos I live for. I don't know why the hell you didn't start with this. So she was already in. Boy, don't you love high school drama. So Mike and Lucas did their part. Now it's up to Robin and Will to get these benzos to knock out the turbos. So they pull up to the counter where Miss Doris is sitting, and you know Robin is gonna sweeten that too. She brought her some Twinkies, and I'm gonna tell you, if she brought me these Twinkies, I'll let her back too. Now Miss Doris was like, "You going to see Miss Massey?" And Robin was like, "Yes'm." And who is Miss Massey, you ask? It's none other than Robin's grandmother. She just be lying to get in the hospital to see Vicky. And to be honest, I don't think she should date Vicky because she lies to her all the time. Now, she was telling the truth about going to see Miss Massey, but that was certainly cut short because the person that she had been lying to this whole time, Vicky, done showed up in the hallway, so Will and Robin had to hide before they were spotted. Because Robin doesn't want to have to tell her that that date at that fancy place that she was trying to take her to is absolutely canceled. So they ended up ducking in somebody else's room on that wing, and Will said, "Why don't you just kiss her again?" And Robin was like, "I knew that was your whack ass bowl cut." He said, "Yeah, it really ain't in vogue no more." And then that's when he started asking different questions about love. And he was like, "How do you know the signs that somebody's into you?" And then she started sharing the information, started giving him that nice little bonding moment that he needed. But right after that, that's when she found the benzos in the other person's room. Didn't even go to Miss Massey's room. I bet she would have enjoyed that visit though. So if we're keeping tally, we got Erica on board with the plan, we got the benzos from the hospital, and back over at the Squawk, we got Murray who keeps coming through with the supplies. Meanwhile, Dustin is over here acting all ungrateful with such a quick turnaround. He's asking for these things that take well over 2 weeks to get even when you're not in quarantine. Bruh, if you don't say thank you and hush, none of this is useful to us. But where he did make himself useful is in the engineering department. You know, Steve was trying to make the van lighter so they could chase after this Demogorgon in the Upside Down. And Dustin was looking at Steve like, none of this is gonna work. So he ended up modding Steve's BMW against his will.
Shh, no talking.
So while Nance, Jonathan, and Murray are walking to test out the shotgun to make sure that the tracker can actually be in one of the shells and fired out of it without being like exploded into a million pieces or whatever, Murray and Jonathan are a little bit further back from Nance, so they're trying to have this little private conversation. And Murray is grilling Jonathan like, "I gave you the Cold Train tape with the engagement ring inside of it. Why haven't you asked her to marry you yet?" And Jonathan's like, "Well, if you haven't been paying attention, a lot has been going on, big dog." And Murray was like, "This is the perfect time to ask." And I'm thinking, Murray, what world do you live in? I feel like he's single. So why in the world would you tell another person that they need to get engaged when the mom and the dad is on life support and the sister is missing? If I were Jonathan, I would have said, "You keep doing the driving and the supplying. I will worry about our relationship status." And if we being real, Nance would have definitely said no if you would ask her right now. I don't know if she would say yes regardless of the timing, because you see how she did Steve, and Steve gets her a lot. You know who else would have a hard time saying yes? Lieutenant Akers, because he's being interrogated by Elle and Hopper. And he didn't know that Elle was there, but he was trying to play dumb when Hopper started asking him questions. And Hopper was like, "We already got this information because Elle's been working from home today and she already got her remote access. We know about Dr. K and the base in the Upside Down." And that's when he started being honest, because he was like, "Dr. K wants the freak." So while walking through his mind, Elle sees a door where she feels that energy from that weapon that was formed against her behind it, and it was so strong that it almost took her and Lieutenant Akers out from his mind. So Hop went to check on Elle, and when she was talking to him, she said that weapon's behind that door for a reason. And to me, the only thing that could be is they got him. They got Vecna. Now back over at Henry's house, Holly is fighting with her thoughts because she said, "Henry told me not to go outside, but why would he write me a letter?" So she went with the latest information she had, which was the letter, and she took her little expedition. And that expedition fit was cute because she had that nice dress and she had that wonderful cloak with the little scarf that she took out of his chest, and she had a little scope to walk out there with. So she went on her way through the woods. Meanwhile, the people up top were on their way to the Turnbow house because it was about to get active over there for dinner. So Erica shows up to the front door, pie in hand. And when Tina answers the door, Erica puts on her best theatrical performance, selling the lie that she wants to make up with her, and she brought her favorite dessert. It took her no time to get in that house. Now, while they were at the table, everybody ate this pie. I mean, they were killing it, except for Tina and Erica. Now, the Pops was going under fastest because he was not only eating that pie, but he was also drinking wine, and everybody just assumed he was drunk. And Erica lightly encouraged Tina to try the pie, which caused a whole little flare-up of why they were beefing in the first place. And while they were having this little back and forth, Mr. Turnbow was trying to walk away in the other room and fell out. So Mrs. Turnbow went over there to check on him. She fell out right next to him. And then Derek thought it was so funny until he passed out at the table himself. So then that only left Tina and Erica. And Tina was over there trying to check on her parents. She told Erica to call the police. But Erica got up like the true villain she wanted to be. Let that pie hit the floor. And she walked over there behind Tina. And Tina said, I told you to call the police. And Erica pulled out a needle like Dexter and said, and I told you to eat the damn pie. What would they do without Erica? So after all the Turnbows are down, the crew comes in to move the family and set up the traps for the Demogorgon. They just destroying these people's house, but I guess if it keeps people safe, then sure. So while the crew does that over at the house,
Will, Joyce, Robin, and Erica are over at the barn.
and Will and Joyce are outside having a conversation, and Joyce is absolutely being a mama because she was like, where's your coat at? And Will was like, Mama, bump all that. I came out here to apologize. He said, I shouldn't have talked to you like that earlier. She was like, it's all good, baby. Honestly, I feel really guilty because when you were taken back in the day, I didn't know where you were for like 8 hours and I felt like a horrible mom. So now I'm just trying to keep you safe, which is very understandable. And even though he's always going to be your baby, he's not a baby now. And she still was going to be motherly because she was like, now go put on that coat. Yeah, listen to your mama, boy, because you got to be warm and ready to go because the crew over at the house had a sighting. The light started flickering. The demo had the block hot. So it hits the house, comes in through Derek's ceiling, picks up the dummy out of Derek's bed, and is looking at it in confusion like, now, this person wasn't on the list. I don't even know who this is. And then Lucas pops in the room and starts trying to piss off the Demogorgon by throwing water balloons at it and draws it into the other room toward the traps. And for a second, they had the momentum. But the Demogorgon started slipping out of those traps and getting away from the fight, and it jumped through one of the portals. And it started running out of the house down the street, so the trackers had to pursue it. And the chase was fine until it changed directions. And they were like, why did it go back the opposite direction? Well, maybe we should ask Badass Derek because he took off his blindfold and was wondering where he was. Don't worry, Derek. You don't have to know where you are because Vecna knows where you are. And that man got the best GPS. So now we know where that Demogorgon is heading. And speaking of GPS, Holly went old school. She took her map quest out and made it all the way over to her destination by the rocks. And she called out for Henry, but Henry didn't answer. And she didn't see him. But what she did see was a figure jump down in that cave and it startled her. So she ran away from the cave and tried to hide, but she was quickly found. And the person was standing right above her. The camera pans up and it turns out to be a friendly face. The face of Max, or the monster according to Henry. That's probably why he didn't want Holly to go in the woods. And that's how episode 3 ended. So when we start episode 4, Joyce is trying her best to talk to Derek about what's really going on. And Derek ain't trying to hear none of that. He was like, child, please, you are a kidnapper. And Joyce did the best she could to try to get him to understand that, hey, Mr. Westside is not exactly who he said he was. He's in control of these monsters. He's in charge of the girls. Sticking with us will keep you safe. And she was like, if I untie you, will you act right? And he was like, yes, ma'am. So she started untying him. And while she was untying him, she was like, you're so brave. She didn't even get to finish the sentence. In pure bad kid fashion, he pushed her ass out the way. He was trying his best to fight everybody. And while he was trying to fight everybody, Will got that tingle in his spine. And that's when he knew the Demogorgon had made it to his destination. Especially because he was seeing exactly what the Demogorgon was seeing. So the Demo pulls up and starts beating down the barn door. And it eventually busts up in there.
Oh, dear Derek, this ain't the time to be falling down. Get your ass up. Stand in that boldness you were just showing.
Now, I do have a question. Like, if you could just open a portal anywhere, why are we breaking down doors? Do we need fear like Pennywise? Because otherwise you're being destructive for destruction's sake. So the Demogorgon busted up in the barn, and Joyce picked up that axe and started swinging. And it was backing up until it got hit by a car. So when they hit the Demogorgon, it took down the Demogorgon and Will, which shows that there are pluses and minuses for Will being close to the hive mind. He not only sees, but he can also feel everything. We're going to come back to this proximity thing a little later. Now the Demogorgon done had it though, because it was like, look, I got jumped in a house and then I come over here and get hit by a car. This is not what I signed up for. So it takes off running. It runs over here, throws a portal up on a silo, climbs through it to go back to the upside down. And then Steve is in the car with Jonathan, Nance, and Dustin. And he was like, you know what? This kind of reminds me of a bopper. You know, it's got a little softness on the inside. I think I can make it through it. If I just push it and just go straight into the portal, we can follow it in the upside down. Now, Dustin and Jonathan were skeptical of this choice. But Nance looked at him and was like, do that shit, bro. Telling you, Steve is on that wavelength with Nance. So he floors it and they make it into the upside down barely. And I'm thinking to myself, that crew on the right side up just keeps shrinking. And it's a good thing that Will is still part of that right side up crew, because this time when he was close to the hive mind, he was able to see deeper into the upside down. So he was able to see other kids being held. Kids make up a very important part of this equation, and the military knows it, which is why they showed up to the people's houses, coming to pick their kids up and put them on a bus so they can take them over to the Max Z. Now, even though these folks made it to the upside down safely, Steve and Dustin decide to have a back and forth that made no sense. And while they were upset and arguing,
Steve was just speeding, and I know that he was trying to keep up with the Demogorgon. But my thing is, if you're going to speed, at least look at the road.
meanwhile, Nance and Jonathan are on the back seat looking like, hey, Steve, Steve. By the time they got his attention, they were seconds away from running into the wall. So, of course, they crashed into it. So now they need help. And Joyce would love to give them help and make sure that they're okay, but she's not having any luck reaching them on the radio. And Robin said, well, at least that means that they made it through. You want to see where they're headed? So Will is painting on this barn wall. He's sharing what was revealed to him in his vision while he was attached to the hive mind. And they were like, what is it? And he's like, I don't know, but I can tell it's important to Vecna. It's almost as if he didn't want me to see it, didn't want me to be there. And Robin was like, you've never been this close to the hive mind before. And he was like, you're right, because the only reason why I knew about Derek is due to this serendipitous moment that I had when I passed by him on the playground. And they asked about Holly, and he said, well, Holly was there, but she was attached to a spire, and I saw 3 other kids attached to spires. And they were like, well, it seems like Vecna's escalating because he needs 8 more kids, which will be 12 total. Me personally, I'm trying to figure out why he needs 12 kids. Part of me wonders if this is going to be a D&D reference that I don't know, and maybe I need to go do some research, or I hope it's not something like a biblical reference where he's trying to have 12 disciples and then he be Jesus or something like that. And while they're talking about that, Mike and Lucas pull up and tell them about what they saw where the military was taking the kids over to the Max Z. Now over at the Rocks, Max and Holly are still kind of conversing, and Holly's a little confused because she's like, you're Max, right? You're supposed to be in a coma. And she brought up the forged letter from Henry because Max was like, girl, I wrote that to get you to come out here. Because at first, Holly thought Max was the monster when she saw that shadowy figure kind of run through the rocks. And Max had to prove herself with a personal memory of Nance talking Mike out of wearing that hot orange mohawk to school, which made Holly feel a bit more comfortable with her. So Max was able to take her back to the crib and show her how she lived. So Holly asked Max, where are we? And Max was like, we're in a memory. But this world is a prison, Henry's prison. But it comes with one hell of a view. Now back in the right side up, Erica is on lookout duty over by the Max Z. She lets the crew know that the cargo has arrived and what barrack they're being held in. And it fits right in with the tunnels that they've already dug, which is an absolute plus. But they'll have to have somebody who can get in and out without being noticed. And that is when Robin gives the I Love Dick speech, which was referring to the story of Tom, Dick, and Harry, where Dick's tunnel was through the washroom. The plan seems like it's forming quite nicely, but they need to add yet another person to the crew to be the eyes on the inside so they can find out which kids know Mr. Whatsit, and this has to be someone who blends in nicely to the space. So they all look over at Derek. Side note, I thought I snacked a lot, but I feel like this brother is always eating something. I feel like they give him food like every scene. I don't know if that's some sort of running joke or whatever, but that's just something I noticed. Now on the flip side of things, Hop and Elle are scoping out the base in the upside down, and Elle is like, how high is that fence? And Hop was like, it doesn't even matter. You're not jumping. This isn't training. And then I'm thinking to myself, so why do we rehearse? And while they were mulling things over, Dustin made contact, and he informed them that they were in the upside down and that they were in need of assistance because they had run into a wall over at the cemetery. And Hopper was like, man, that's on the other side of town. Y'all need to stay put. And he told him, we got to keep these airways clear. And in pure Peppa Pig fashion, that man hung up on him. So then we get back to that combo between Max and Holly. Max was telling Holly that Vecna's curse never leaves you and how each victim he took opened up a new gate. And that's when Holly asked, if he took you, then how are you here? And Max said, honestly, I'm supposed to be dead. And for a second, I was. But then she said she felt something calling to her. Before we get to the things that called her, I would like to leave a note that Elle actually resurrected her at the end of last season because she and Henry are cut from the same cloth. So back to what called Max. Max talked about waking up in Hawkins' lab with dead kids all around her in that memory, and then she walked into another time period. So she pretty much walked into 1959, back in high school, where you heard Joyce, and I think Steve's parents were there too. They were trying to be jerks to Joyce by throwing away the flyer that she was handing out that was advertising the play Oklahoma. On it, you see a specific date that it's supposed to happen on, November 6, 1959. And look at who is introducing at the bottom, good old Henry. Now, this is a very special date for some reason, because it seems like Vecna always takes people around this time. Remember what Lucas said at the hospital. He said this is a few days before Will was actually taken last time. So this sounds like something very ritualistic on Vecna's part. So I'm wondering what the importance of that date is to him. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the day that he took out his family. So Max was getting an exclusive peek behind the curtain. And that's when she started realizing that she was in Henry's memories and that he too is a prisoner in his own mind. And Holly replied, this sort of sounds like Camazotz from A Wrinkle in Time. And in that story, this powerful being named It is being held captive on this planet that it rules over. Now, I've never read this story, but I feel like at some point they're going to utilize something in that book to help Holly escape. Or that might have been the only point they needed to use from the story as reference. But we shall see. Now, Max said, in this situation, there's only 3 doors you can take. You take your life, you accept the fate, or you escape. And for a while, she had been walking through his memories like a maze. That is until she heard Kate Bush blasting through the memories, which meant that Lucas hadn't given up on her just yet. And she ran toward the sound because she thought that was her way out. But that's when everything went left. Meanwhile, over at the Max Z, delightful Derek shows up to the gate because his classmates have come up missing. And of course they brought him in because he was a kid of a particular age. They took him to the place that they were holding the other children. He went to the restroom, he went to the stall and radioed the crew to tell them exactly how many paces it took him to get there. And after he shared that information, he closed the door, put an out of order sign on it. Now, I understand using your gum to make the paper stick to the door, but did you have to get spit everywhere? I mean, it was just running down. I was like, this is just nasty. You know who else was spitting? Elle. She was spitting straight facts when she said, all I gotta do is run, jump this fence to the lab, and land right as the thunder strikes. And she executed perfectly for the most part. So she opened the gate for Hop to get in, and they were off to the lab. And they had a nice little moment there, because that's when Hop was kind of looking at it like, you did a good job, girl. And she said, thank you for trusting me. And I feel like that's a moment where Hop is like, I need to learn to trust Elle, just like Joyce needs to learn to trust Will. We raised them right, but we can't parent them for forever. Now, someone who needs quite a bit of parenting is Derek. Now, Joyce is already putting that battery in his back to be better. He is now delightful Derek instead of shithead Derek. And delightful Derek he is, because that brother is out here preaching the good word of Henry, only for the ears of those who love and know Mr. Whatsit. But it wasn't for this particular crowd, because they was like, Derek done lost it. So they walked away laughing hysterically. But little Debbie walked up, was like, hey, are you talking about Mr. Whatsit? So I got a bone to pick. How many of these kids were taught stranger danger back in the 80s? They didn't do that or something? Because y'all over here talking to this random man all the time, and your parents haven't met this man not one time. Listen, I was born mid-80s and raised hardcore in them 90s, and I promise you, we were taught not to talk to strangers. I would love to see a backstory on how Henry made these kids feel comfortable enough to talk to him and how he lured them away from everybody else. I wonder if he put some sort of spell on them where they could see their environments where it looked like everybody knew who he was. There had to be something tricky because there's no way you let this strange man walk up to you just start talking out of nowhere. So the crew is walking in the field and they're headed to one of the entrances of a tunnel. And while they were walking, Will was talking to Mike about how it felt when the Demogorgon was in the barn. He said he could feel exactly what the Demogorgon was feeling, but he was still afraid for his mom. But he just couldn't help her. Now, I thought he accidentally helped her on purpose, if that makes sense. Because yeah, he was seeing through the eyes of the Demogorgon and stuff like that, but I don't think he recognized that he could actually control it or anything. But he was looking at his mom through the eyes of the Demogorgon. I don't care what I was looking through the eyes of. If I ever saw my mom swinging an axe, I was going to be terrified. Now, I don't know what the upbringing is like in that buyer's home, but I know Will probably was afraid of his mom hitting him with that axe, though. She might as well have told the Demogorgon to go pick a switch. He was backing up from that ass whooping until he got hit by the car. And I think that was all Will, because had he not been there, it would have been the same case as the Wheelers. That was his first time being that close to it. And Mike thought similarly. He was like, maybe you're some type of wizard, and you could probably pull strings just like Vecna.
And then he said, maybe you're more like a sorcerer where your powers are more innate. He said, with all the people gone, we need some magic up here.
I needed Will to pay attention because this man started misinterpreting how Mike was like sharing this information with him. I don't know why he thought Mike was flirting, because everybody, including Vecna, knows that Mike loves Elle. But if little brother Byers had his way, they would be
Mike Will made it.
Will, I need you to stop lusting and start listening to your partner. Y'all out here trying to save the world, baby.
And Robin clocked that look in his eyes and said, I see why we had that conversation earlier. Now we're going to have a different conversation because you don't want a straight to be your first heartbreak. Now back in the Upside Down, you have Dustin sitting in the car and he's doing a little homework. He's doing his math. And then all of a sudden he's like, great Scott. And then he runs over to the crew to tell them, hey, I was doing a little math in the car and I figured out that this is a circle. And at the center of that circle is Hawkins' lab. And we know that's not an accident. Now that was a good discovery on Dustin's part. Now Max was having quite a few discoveries of her own while walking through Vecna's mind. The music was still playing in her head, but then she started seeing more memories. She saw Vecna's first memory of her, then she had a bad memory of her brother Billy, and she eventually found her way out, but technology failed her. For the people that don't know, when you were listening to tapes back in the day, once it got to the end, you had to rewind it. And he was probably listening to a single, so the rewind probably took seconds, but she needed every piece of those seconds, because she was running as quickly as she could to that portal. A portal where she could see and feel Lucas. She said she felt his hand on hers. But as soon as the song ended, the tape stopped and he had to rewind. So it closed the portal. I was like, so y'all didn't have Kate Bush CDs back in the day? CDs did exist during that time. I guess they weren't early adopters. But anyway, the portal closed and Henry showed up like, hey Max, how you doing? So he chased her out of that place because I feel like the house is actually home base. And I think he figured that out, and that's why he's chasing after Max. Can't let her out so she can go share the cheat codes with everybody. So he chased her all the way through the woods until she got to that cave and she ran in, where he could not enter behind her for some reason. She said he was not only frozen, but he looked terrified. So I wonder if there's some sort of relic in there that's keeping him at bay.
After listening to Max talk about how she found refuge within these rocks, I actually do think there was something written on those rocks on the illustration on the map. I think it did say sacred.
Now, once Max recognized he couldn't come in behind her, she said, you know what? I've never seen rocks look so cozy in my life. Max told Holly, I made this cave into a home where there's no one there to haunt my nights. She said, I guess I'm gonna stay up in here. And in making that place her home, she took door number 2, which was accepting her fate. And that was until Holly showed up. Now door number 3 is back on the table. And now she wants Holly to go back over to Henry's house. And Holly was like, you want me to go back in there? And Max was like, listen, he can't know that you were out. He already told you not to come over here. He wanted her to be afraid of monsters, but like I said earlier, I think Max was that monster. And Holly said, tell me what I need to do. So while Holly was getting the instructions from Max, Robin was trying to impart wisdom on good old Will, because she definitely saw how he was looking at Mike. And she said, not on my watch. So she started speaking in code about falling in love with a straight. And she had to speak in code because, you know, they in the 80s. And I don't think they were able to just speak so freely back in the day. Even brought Terrible Tone Tammy out the woodwork. Robin had a huge crush on Tammy. She said, listen, she might have been an awful singer, but to me, she was Whitney Houston. And I said, don't you ever compare nobody with the adjective awful next to vocals to Whitney Houston. You better compare them to Whitney Hutton, because I know you lying. But Robin was madly in love with this woman, and it was truly a one-sided relationship because she didn't even know she was in love with her. But then Tammy fell for Steve, and it just broke her into a million pieces. And it sent her into a downward spiral in her life, until one day she found footage of her younger self, and she realized how carefree she was and how full of life she was. And that was the moment that she realized that she had been looking for things outside of herself in someone else, but she had it in herself this whole time. She just had to stop being so afraid. And this conversation definitely resonated with Will, and we'll get into why later. So the point was made by the time that Lucas and Mike hit the dig. So it's great to see progress happening there. Meanwhile, Elle and Hop's progress was kind of being thwarted because Lieutenant Akers got free from that knot that Hopper tied, made it to the gate of the base just in time to alert Dr. K about Elle and Hop. So the alarm came on, the kryptonite machine was activated, and the forces were on their way. So their path was about to be a bit of a struggle. Speaking of struggle, Lucas and Mike are not being careful on this dig. Now, if you know you're digging under the loo of a barrack, you would think that you understood that pipes were there that contain water, right? So why are you swinging these metal pieces all willy-nilly and just hitting pipes? This is exactly how you spring a leak. So while they're over there digging themselves into a deeper hole, Guru Derek got his cult members over here going on a visual journey with him like his mom when she's out of Compound V, or Volume or whatever. And Derek gets an alert from Joyce on the walkie in his lunchbox. So he taps Debbie on the head so she can go to the bathroom. And then the next person, and then the next person. So they're getting all these kids down the hole. But then all of a sudden, Mike feels himself getting hit in the head with some water, because that's what happens when you poke a hole in a pipe, Mike. So he climbs up to inspect for a second and realizes there's a leak in this old building and we gotta move. Otherwise, it's gonna be trouble. Speaking of trouble, Dr. K finds Elle in the lab, and poor Elle can't do too much because that kryptonite machine is still on. And she says, hey, we've been looking for you for so long. Now, in one of the other rooms, Hop and Lieutenant Akers get into a whole little tussle. And Hopper was kind of holding his own against Lieutenant Akers, until he threw that man into the wrong glass case. Sure, he knocked out Lieutenant Akers, but then he got snatched up by that free tentacle. And at that time, Dr. K walked in and said, it's best not to struggle, because it only gets stronger. And she said, now you're the reason why we couldn't find Elle for all these years. And you brought her back here? I'm trying to figure out why though. Like, what do you know that we don't? Now back over at the MacZ, the water is just gushing out of those pipes. And Mike and Will are trying to fix it, but plumbers they are not. So you knew it was going to be good and terrible. Now one of the kids from the Cult of Henry was walking to the bathroom and slipped a little bit. So that piqued Ashley Klein's interest. And I'm thinking, girl, don't you have some books to color or something, or a light bright to play with? She done jumped on the case like she's a resident assistant or a property manager or something. She just couldn't mind her business. So she went in there to check it out, and she saw that it was an absolute wet floor, saw Will and Mike, as well as a hole in the floor of the stall with somebody climbing through it. So you know she had to run tell that. And Derek was like, oh hell, we done got busted. So he told him, let's go, let's go, let's go. My man was running. And before he closed that bathroom door, he yelled, Ashley Klein is a snitch. Derek kind of growing on me. Now, when they shut the door, they're trying to keep the officers out of the bathroom. And, you know, it's only going to last for so long. And it appears that that tentacle was only going to hold for so long because Dr. K got distracted when Elle came in with that pair of scissors and she kind of sliced her a little bit. And that was all the distraction that Hopper needed to swing forward and kick that button that controlled the heat. And he warmed up that tentacle enough to make it drop him. So Hop gets free and Dr. K turns around, but it's too late because he is on a mission. He's ready to get this key up off you. He knocked her out, took it from her. So back over at the MacZ, the officers eventually get into that bathroom and they see what's going on. So they go ahead and stop the people that's already climbing down the hole, say, go ahead and come with us. So now the kids all split up. You got 3 kids that's running with Robin. They're ahead of everybody. You got 2 kids that's running with Lucas. And the other kids, plus Joyce, Will, and Mike, are with the officers now. So the situation getting a bit sticky. And I thought the situation in the lab had gotten better since Hopper got free, but no, that's just as sticky. Because Hopper was knocking windows out, and then he told Elle, go ahead and hop out real quick. I'm going to go over here and check on Vecna. Now, why would you tell Elle to hop out? Probably because you got that boom boom power on your chest, and you don't want her to get hurt. Now, who told you to do this, though? He's over here telling Elle goodbye and I love you and all this kind of stuff. And she can't stop him because the machine is still going. So he closes that door on Elle and walks to that room where they're supposedly holding Vecna. When he opens it up,
The screen faded to black.
and of course they flip scenes because they're not going to show that right now. So we get over back to the MacZ and Erica is up there. She lets everybody know the military got Will in them. And Sullivan pulls up and he's like, what's going on here? And one of the officers was like, sir, we lost 5 of the kids. And Sullivan was like, I know you must be talking about them goats that do yoga because you can't be talking about 5 actual human children. And Joyce went ahead and told him, listen, these kids are in danger and we're trying to get them to safety. To which Sullivan replied, why do you think they're here? We're protecting them. And Lil Derek chimed in and said, if I may interject, I've seen what was coming. And no shade, but kind of shade, y'all can't protect shit. That mouth of his drew a smack right upside his head. Then that brought about a little pushing match amongst the crowd. And while they were doing that little push back and forth, Will caught the shivers again. And he fell down on all 4s. And he was just shaking. He saw him coming. And his mom ran over to him. He had a terrifying look on his face when he told her, they're here. The lights started doing their thing again, and it wasn't like it was just one of them that showed up. It was a gaggle of them Gorgons. They came like they meant business. And at this point, Will is in full doom mode. He's seeing everything in first person. And Erica's trying to let everybody know, hey, we are under attack over here. But to be honest, even if they wanted to help them, they couldn't get there fast enough. Also, the portals were opening up everywhere the kids were, including over at the Squawk where Murray and Robin had the 3 kids in the truck, in the tunnel where Lucas had 2 of the kids, and of course you see him over at the MacZ just coming out of everywhere. Side note, I love this shot where the Demogorgon is running from the Upside Down through this building into the MacZ. This is one of my favorite shots so far. Come on, cinematography. So like I said, the portals are opening up everywhere. So Murray and Robin hop up in that truck with the kids and they speed off. My thing is, either the Demogorgons are super fast or this is a slow ass truck because they were all over that truck. Now Mike was trying to get these kids to safety over at the Radio Shack and they almost made it, but a couple of the Demogorgons had them bracketed in. They were like, where y'all going? I know you ain't going up in this Radio Shack. It's going to go away in the future anyway. And then all of a sudden the guy with the flamethrower hit one of them with that fire. And all of them stopped, dropped, and rolled in pain, including Will. They were rolling in the streets. They were rolling in those tunnels, and they were rolling in the MacZ. Listen, there's a lot going on up top. Meanwhile, downstairs in the Upside Down, the kryptonite machine turns off, and Hop opens up the door for Elle. And I'm glad he didn't blow himself up, because that wouldn't have made any sense to me. And so Elle is walking toward that door where they're supposedly keeping Vecna. And at that very same time, Mike is standing at the Mag-Z and looking at that big gate because there's a shadowy figure standing there. Now, just who could this be? There's only so many options. Well, Elle had a discovery of her own. It was in fact not Vecna in that room, but it was Sister Number 8. You know, the one that makes people see things that aren't there?
Boom.
So now that we knew who was behind door number 1, we definitely know who's behind this curtain. It was none other than King V himself. You know, Beyonce, the one that was banished into the Shadow Realm. He went from, I'm a nice looking guy,
To an extra from the Thriller video.
all the way to a face only a mother could love. Now, he might not be much of a looker, but he can dress his ass off and his walk is mean. He's been plotting his takeover for a long time. So once that curtain opened, he came stomping down that runway in his black Air Forces, just draped in Slim Jim couture. He was serving Stretch Armstrong and get back, you don't know me like that realness. My man was explosive. And when he makes it to the end of the runway, he raises his beehive from the ground in which they laid and says,
Okay, ladies, now let's get in formation.
let's get these kids and go. And just like the deadbeat dad he is, he decided to summon his firstborn son, the one he hadn't seen in years. He was like, Will.i.am, do you see the children? Do you see them?
He asked, do you know why I use children to shape the new world?
Because they're weak in mind, body, and soul. No Anita Baker. They're easily broken, easily reshaped, controlled. The perfect vessels. You were the first and you broke so easily. You showed me what was possible. He told him some minds don't belong in this world. They belong in mine. And then he dropped William, and then he walked away as if he was going to get milk again and never to return. But he should have stuck around because you know them deadbeat dads be mad when their kids turn out to be something. Well, he should have stayed because the show was just about to start. So Vecna pretty much commanded the Demogorgons to kill everybody that Will cared about. Because they weren't really going after the military folks or anybody else. They were going after Mike, they were going after Lucas, and they were going after Robin. And then Will harkened back to that conversation between him and Robin in the tunnel. Then he took a trip down memory lane to the brighter moments of his childhood. And then he rose up and took control of the Demogorgons. Froze them Gorgons mid-dunk. Had them all the way confused. And he mangled them junks up just like Vecna would do it. And once they were all done, he wiped the blood from his nose. I was like, oh, not him transforming into 11. I'm like, come on, Robin, with the words for the win. You put that battery in that man's back so he can get that oorah energy. Boots, girl. And that's where the 4th episode ended. Now, I do have some thoughts. I feel like Vecna has created some monsters that I don't think he's really paying attention to. Because if we're looking at it, Will took out 3 Demogorgons at the same time. 2 remotely, and none of it bothered him. Whereas if somebody would have burned the Demogorgon, it would have hurt him. But he tapped into his sorcerer powers and he killed the Demogorgons and nothing happened to him. Besides a little nosebleed. Now my biggest question about Will is, why is his feeling of the hive only based on proximity? Meanwhile, all the other beings that are attached to that hive, they feel it. Like in the finale of season 4 where Hopper and Joyce and Murray were all in Russia. And then you had Vecna and the kids all in that house in Hawkins. And they burned something in Russia. And it hit all the stuff that was in the hive no matter where it was. Except for Will. Because he was in California with Elle and them. Will he be able to tap into his power at any time, or will he have to wait until he's close to the hive mind? Because Mike said the powers are innate in the sorcerer. I feel like Vecna's creating other super beings. Remember, he just got the final 8 kids. I don't know what he's using them for. And he's plugging them up to his ecosystem just like Will. Now wait till they get to that house with Holly. Holly gonna turn the whole flock against them. And I hope they jump him, because the same kids that he said were weak in mind and body will definitely be his undoing. So if we keep an account, we have at least 3 powerful people on our team. Because we got 11, we got number 8 now, and then we have Will. I wouldn't be surprised if Max woke up out that coma with some interesting abilities. Now, as far as these future episodes go, I'm not really sure what's about to happen. I do feel like somebody on our favorite team is gonna die, and it'll likely be one of the characters that people actually care about. And it's at least one. It could be more than one. I don't think you get out of this situation unscathed. And as far as Vecna goes, I'm not sure if he'll get killed or not. Although I find it intriguing, I haven't really played D&D before. But in the brief reading that I've actually done on Vecna, it's believed that you never kill or defeat Vecna. So the best that they probably can do is everybody jump them, incapacitate them, and they hold them in that like space with all those waves hitting them, that kryptonite machine. It'll probably have to be for an eternity because I'm not sure if he ages like regular people now. And that's pretty much it for this video. What did y'all think of the first 4 episodes? Feel free to drop down in the comment section and let me know what you're thinking. Also hit that like button, share it if you want to, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when I drop new content. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.